Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the gameplay for Ragnarok, the Twilight of the Gods. So how did it start? Well, we ended up to determine what turn the Aesir players, heroes and units were going to enter. We rolled the dice, we got a 6, so we added 2 to that, and so that meant he was going to have to wait 8 turns. I used the dice to kind of keep track and just turn them over every time to keep track of that. During that time, I decided to take it easy on putting units and heroes through. First thing I did was put 4 frost giants onto the first space. Second turn came, I moved them up and added 3 frost giants and 1 hero. And again, referring to the Rainbow Bridge collapse table, if it's 4 or fewer that are on any one space, there's no effect at all. Like I said, I didn't want to gamble with any of that, even though with 5 units there's a chance. There's only 1 chance. The reason why is because I was worried that when you get into combat with somebody, once you engage in combat, you're engaged in combat. That means when it becomes their turn, even though the Aesir units weren't allowed to bring anybody onto the map yet, they still go through their sequence of play. And one of the sequence of play is if a hero is engaged in combat, combat continues. One of the results, when battling a unit, these numbers here that don't have the negative sign in front of them are how many spaces that unit would retreat. My worry then was if I had too many piled up behind him, especially in the space 3 here, if I had 5, took that gamble, he would always be coming back if he engaged in a fight with Heimdall, and Heimdall had him retreat. I'd have to do that roll every time, or however many times it happened. Hopefully that makes sense. That was kind of my strategy and thought process during it anyway. That said, the Frost Giant got fairly lucky on the 2nd or 3rd attack turn, I believe it was. He ended up damaging. So again, you take the Frost Giant 7, add it to Heimdall's 1, which is 8. We ended up getting lower than 8. With the 3 dice, and he ended up rolling a 5, which against a hero takes 4 off of their endurance, and then does a G, which is hero suffers grievous injury. And a grievous injury against a hero means that every time it's the Aesir player's turn, automatically Heimdall goes down 2 levels on the track automatically. So you can see right here he's already down to 6, so he's going to die. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. While he's grievously injured, he can still be attacked and have other points taken off of him. The one thing that Heimdall can do, or the units can do, or the heroes can do, is decide not to attack or try to disengage, even though if he tried to disengage he doesn't have a movement point value anyway. If he decides to just kind of basically rest for the turn, he can go up 1 to kind of recover just a little bit. Again, it's inevitable that he's going to die, but this at least drags it out a little longer. Because once you're engaged, you're engaged. I tried a couple of times to disengage that Frost Giant, and even though what you do is you take your units or heroes movement value, which in this case is 3, subtract it from who he's attacking, their movement value, which in this case is 0, reference that number, so it was 3, which would fall under the 2 or more. Roll a dice. If you come up with a D, that means you're disengaged. The 3 times I tried it, believe it or not, they all came up as 5 or a 6, which is the disengagement fails, so he's been locked in this battle with him. So I didn't try every single time. My hope was that at least if I tried, I could move the Frost Giant onto the board a little more, bring somebody new in, and start trickling in my units. Why is there only one unit on the hex? Well, that's part of the rules. Any number of heroes can occupy the same hex. Only one unit can occupy the same hex. Now, frost giants versus fire giants, I take those as two different units, so one of each can occupy the space. As far as I understand, again, that's going to take a little more reading to clarify that. Because they both are considered units, it might be that one or the other can be on a hex. I'm not 100% sure. So that's where we sit on the Jotun side. Eventually, we did come to the time in our battle where the Aesir units can start entering the game board, and you can see what we have so far. Again, I'm not by any stretch a wargaming veteran. How things move and how you set up kind of groupings is a bit beyond me. I don't know a strategy when it comes to that sort of thing, so I just kind of went with it. Units cannot move through walls, they can move through doors. I couldn't find a clarification in the little bit that I looked, so I'm playing it as if the Aesir players, it reflects the same for the Aesir players. In this case, they can move through the doors because they are coming out of Asgard. They're not going to be climbing over any walls, so I made all my units start walking out through the doors. When they enter the map, that's one movement point. You don't have to use all of your movement points. So for the first grouping that came on was these few tokens here. The next turn was these few tokens here. A couple of Valkyries came on, and we have a bunch of warriors. Odin and Freyr came on. Freyr rolled a 1, which again, referring to the rule, Odin comes on automatically the first time that happens. So that's why they're paired together. I didn't put them on the same hex, again, because I don't have any strategy as far as movement goes. So I figured I'd keep them on separate hexes. They could attack differently. I don't know. I have no thought process through it whatsoever, other than getting some of the characters and the heroes and the units on the board and getting ready to go. So there we have it. I'm gonna kind of, well, we'll see what happens on the next turn here, see how it goes. But that's where we stand so far. Heimdall is coming to an end. I might try to move him on so I can move Fenrir up, and maybe some of the heroes can get on that hex and start attacking him so they stand a little more of a chance. When a character is grievously injured, his attack becomes 1 less. Somebody fighting him, their attack becomes 1 more. So it's giving us basically an 8 plus 1 is a 9 instead of a 7 plus 1. So it's giving us a small chance to have a successful attack and do some damage. The terrain effects, it's clear, oh no, it's a road terrain, costs 1 movement point to enter, but if there's an effect on combat, it would list it here, and there's none. There's no effect on clear terrain and no effect on road terrains. Every other terrain has an effect. An intact gate, for example, combat across the gate is prohibited, etc. So it gives you a little bit of references and rules there. Nothing that's applied yet though. So there you have it. There's the first phase. I'm going to play a little more and then I'll come back and we'll see how things have advanced. So here's what's happened. You can see a little bit of movement. A couple of the frost giants were able to disengage from battle and they moved out. I don't know how smart that was. I don't know anything about it, but it allowed me to move a couple of more people up the Rainbow Bridge track, Fenrir being one of them. So what happened? Well, you can see that Heimdall is gone, and Fenrir has a special attack. It is called the lunging attack. Basically what happens is it gives him, you announce a lunging attack before combat is resolved. The Aesir half of the round, wait a sec. Fenrir may increase his attack rating by 2. So it gives him an extra 2. So he was already at 11 because Heimdall was grievously injured. So 10 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1. 10, 12, 13, that gave him a 14. He was able to roll under a 14. Now the interesting thing about this is then you roll on the damage table. We rolled a 5, which is a -4 grievous attack. When you've done, if Fenrir makes a lunging attack and inflicts a grievous injury, then there is a chance that he has swallowed the defending Aesir hero. The Jotun player rolls 1 dice. If the result is a 1, 2, or 3, then the defending Aesir hero has been swallowed and is removed from play immediately. So Fenrir swallowed Heimdall, ate him up good. So there you go. So Heimdall is out of the game, and we've taken both of his tokens off to the side of the board. There is our first casualty, which now gives us freedom to pour in our troops. Again, we have to expend all of these first across the Rainbow Bridge before we can dig into our fire giants and Surt and Garm and Serpent. What's happened over on the Aesir side? Well, a bunch more units have been able to come through. Again, Odin and Freyr are leading the pack. A couple of Valkyries at the side. Am I going to go across the water? I haven't decided yet. I might kind of get some troops all lined up. Maybe move the 2 heroes to the same counter. I haven't decided yet. At least to make a line, get a good line going and kind of pile up behind them. No more heroes have made it onto the game board yet. I can't seem to roll a 1 on this side of things to save their lives. Another Valkyrie unit has came on, but just 1, I believe, yeah. Not much movement otherwise. Everything else has kind of stayed the same. So now it's time to try to consolidate my troops here for what's inevitably going to be, I don't know, I think I might come up through the top, maybe have a few units come here and maybe have a few come around that side, maybe try to spread out their forces a little bit. We'll see, I haven't quite decided yet. So there's the update. So I'm starting to figure out the movements a little more here and what can be contained on a particular hex. Let's look at the Aesir sides here. So let me get my handy dandy tweezers there. So here, for example, we have Tyr. Underneath Tyr is Valkyrie. A Valkyrie and a ground unit can occupy the same hex. So in this case, I could have any number of heroes along with 1 Valkyrie unit and 1 warrior unit on 1 hex, which makes for quite a force to be reckoned with. So that's something good to keep in mind. Tyr and Odin are the only ones that produce berserk warriors. Odin's range is the 6 hexes surrounding him. He can turn them in, so in this case this warrior would be turned into a berserker hex. I haven't been doing it only because there's no combat coming into play right now. Once the units get a bit closer, I'm going to keep an eye on that. That only lasts the turn. When it comes back to the Aesir player's turn, things revert back to normal and movement takes place, and then it'll reactivate basically. Tyr can only make a berserk warrior when they are on the same hex as him. His range, he doesn't have a range for that. He has to be on top of one. So if Tyr were to move to this hex here with the warrior, then he'd be able to turn him into a berserk warrior. So that's good to know. Feels like I'm getting a little bit more of a handle on the movement and things. Things are starting to shape up here. The other thing to remember about Odin is on Sleipnir, and he can move 5 hexes, but because he basically flies over all the terrain, which means that he ignores all the terrain movement effects. So he can move right over top of trees, move right over the rivers, any sort of terrain, and it just counts as one, which would have been the same for him in regards to the Asgard wall here. He could have flown right over the wall he could have flown right over the wall at any spot and not had an effect, which is fine, totally fine. Don't want to get too carried away with that sort of thing. So that's that. I just thought I'd fill you in on that. I'm just about to do the Jotun's move here and start to kind of get these forces in. So that means that for these ones, the ground units are frost giants and fire giants, which means that they couldn't occupy the same space. Again, the same rules apply. There can be any amount of heroes on a particular hex, but under them can only be either one frost giant or one fire giant. When it comes to the Rainbow Bridge though, none of those rules apply. It's just as many forces as you want on it. Obviously, again, making sure you're watching this collapse table here. So that's how that's been working. So we'll move on to that, and with those rules in mind, we'll come back when we get into some sort of combat, or at least get near combat, unless some other rules pop up in my readings here. So here we go. We finally made it to the part of our game where we've started to clash and engage. My Jotun forces are still slowly trickling in. Again, my strategies are definitely in need of some work, I imagine, because it's pretty haphazard around here, but this is what it is. My Aesir forces have kind of flooded out. We've done a lot of stacking, as you can see, Valkyries with warriors. Thor had a Valkyrie, but on the previous one, Fenrir did his lunging attack. He was on the same hex, managed to take Thor down 4 notches, and the Valkyrie is now out of the game. The Valkyrie got killed by Fenrir. Yeah, Odin is stacked here with Freyr and a Valkyrie, so that'll get into something next. I can totally see how at this point it's really just about positioning your pieces and your troops and your heroes and your ground units, and moving them and having them spread across the board. Like, already I can see, and this little unit here, I'm just about to do the Aesir player's turn again to see if the last hero, and there's 2 Valkyries that are left, if they make it into the game at this point. The intent is to kind of keep these units up top and bring these ones down, because I fully intend, and that's the thing, I guess, playing solo, I fully intend to move these units through around this way, so I'm gonna bring these down and they'll have a little battle here. But I might have spread myself a little thin off the top, or not thin, sorry, focused my forces a little too much here, in hopes of, crossing the river to just confront them before they make any headway, which might turn out to be a bad thing. We'll see. I don't know how much longer I'm gonna play tonight. It's already 2:15 in the morning, but at this point, it's as Callendale said in his video, it's going to become a dice fest of just rolling dice and checking terrain effects and checking the damage table and keep reading the rules as far as what special power each of the heroes have, and just moving the pieces along. It's fairly cool, actually. I'm enjoying it quite a bit more than I thought that I would. I'll give it that. Who knows what'll happen given another half an hour of just rolling dice. But it's, now that I've started playing, I feel it's fairly easy to get a hang of it. I think I've got the hang of this disengagement table. Attack rating modification. Subtract 1 from the attacker's attack rating if a friendly hero occupies the same hex as the defending unit. I haven't really been referring to this 8.7 here. I'll have to read that section. We haven't come into a time yet where there's been berserk units, so that hasn't been played yet. Again, the terrain has been played, but we haven't had any confrontations across the water yet or in the trees. It's all been kind of on the road or on one of the clear hexes there. I've been keeping up with looking at this. It just hasn't happened yet. There hasn't been any modifications that have come into play. The blinding light, I feel like I've got the gist of that. Same with the combat. And the rainbow bridge, like I said, I've been playing it really safe, so I haven't had to roll once. I've always been keeping it maximum 4 on a given space. And we've only got what looks like 3, 6, 7 more fire giants left to come across. So what do we have here? We have Garm, Cert, and the Serpent to come through yet. I haven't quite decided where I'm going to send those forces. I guess it'll be good to get them on this side of the board by that time. A lot of this fighting will have probably taken care of itself, and then it'll give me either an opening, or all of the Aesir units will be so bunched up that it'll give me another path maybe to go around the top, or maybe I continue with them along the bottom or sneak through the tree line, or who knows. So yeah, I've gotten into it quite a bit more. It's actually quite a bit of fun, and I think Mr. Tom is really going to get a kick out of this. The movement part of it seems to be very, well, not seems to be, I'm assuming obviously it's very important. Where you're placing your characters, how you're spreading them out, how you're stacking them, and then making your kind of units move as a unit is really going to set the tone for the rest of the game. So there you have it. I'll probably just cut it here, and there's a good look at Ragnarok, the Twilight of the Gods. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.